Imagine risking, like, complete social ruin, religious defilement, and honestly, possibly even physical danger, all just to ask a complete stranger for a drink of water. May God bless your day and the week ahead as you join us.
Thank you. And yeah, such a striking image to start with.
It really is. Today, we're taking a deep dive into an incredible set of study notes from the Holman and NWA study Bibles, focusing specifically on chapter 4 of the Gospel of John.
Right, which is just an incredibly rich portion of the text.
Oh, absolutely. And the mission for our deep dive today is to unpack two incredible narratives that basically happen back to back on a single journey. You have the famous encounter with the Samaritan woman at the well, and then this long-distance healing of a royal official's son.
And what's so brilliant about the author's approach here is how they use the physical world. I mean, the most ordinary things to point to these massive spiritual truths.
Yeah, like we're talking about a cup of water, a lunch break, a geographical map, and the text uses these mundane things to completely shatter cultural barriers.
Exactly. The study notes do a really fantastic job of bringing all that underlying historical tension right to the surface.
So before we get to the profound metaphors, I feel like we have to look at the map because there's a huge social tension just in the geography.
Definitely. You have to understand the route.
Right. So setting the scene, Jesus is leaving Judea down in the south, and he's heading north to Galilee. And the notes mention he's leaving because the Pharisees are, well, they're tracking his rising popularity, right?
Yeah, they're keeping a close eye on the sheer volume of baptisms his disciples are doing.
Right. So he decides to head north, and the text says and this is a quote, he had to pass through Samaria. Now, I'm looking at the map provided in the study notes, and Samaria is right smack in the middle between Judea and Galilee.
It is. It's geographically the most direct line.
Right. It's the direct route. It's like, choosing to take the interstate instead of the winding back roads. So I guess I'm struggling to see why the study notes make such a massive deal out of that phrase, had to. Was it just a practical shortcut?
Well, physically, yes, it's the shortest route. But culturally, religiously, it was the absolute last route a strict, observant Jew of that era would ever take.
Wait, really? Even if it saved them days of travel?
Oh, absolutely. The animosity between Jews and Samaritans, I mean, it wasn't just some minor border dispute. It was deep, it was bitter, and it was centuries old.
Okay, so where does that start? The Knights trace it back pretty far, right?
Yeah, they trace it back to the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom.
Oh, wow. I want to pause there because we hear about that historical event a lot, but how does an ancient military conquest translate into the intense, social hatred we see in this specific text?
It basically comes down to geopolitical strategy. When the Assyrians conquered the region centuries earlier, their tactic for preventing rebellion was to deport the native Israelites and bring in foreigners from other conquered lands.
Okay. Displace the population so they can't organize?
Exactly. And over generations, those remaining Israelites intermarried with the newly settled foreigners. They adopted some foreign customs, and eventually they developed a sort of syncretic religion.
Meaning they blended different beliefs together.
Right. For instance, they only accepted the first 5 books of Moses, and they even built their own rival temple on Mount Gerizim.
Oh, so they had a completely separate center of worship.
Yeah. So by the 1st century, strict Jews in the south viewed Samaritans not just as ethnic half-breeds, but as outright heretics who had compromised the purity of the faith.
Wow.
They considered Samaritans to be in this permanent state of ritual impurity.
Which totally explains the alternate travel routes the notes mention.
Yes. People would go to extreme lengths to avoid them. Many Jewish travelers going from Judea to Galilee would literally cross the Jordan River to the east.
Like going entirely out of their way.
Walk all the way north through Perea and then cross back over the river just to avoid stepping foot in Samaritan territory.
That is wild. They would add days of walking in that harsh climate solely to bypass them.
Exactly. So when the text says Jesus had to pass through Samaria, it's definitely not a geographical requirement. It's a sovereign, mission-driven necessity.
He's intentionally walking right into hostile territory.
He really is.
So that sets a completely different stage for what happens next. He arrives at the town of Sychar, near a plot of land the patriarch Jacob gave to his son Joseph, and there's a well there.
Jacob's well, yes.
Right. Jesus is exhausted from the journey. He sits by the well, and the text notes it's the 6th hour. Now, the notes clarify that the 6th hour is noon.
High noon in the Middle East.
Yeah, high noon. And going to draw water involves hauling these massive, heavy clay amphorae. It's like doing heavy manual labor during the absolute most punishing part of a summer day.
When everyone else will be resting in the shade.
Exactly. So why is this woman there at the absolute worst time of day?
Well, the notes suggest that timing indicates severe social isolation. In that culture, drawing water was a communal activity for women.
Like a social gathering.
Right, usually done in the cool of the morning or the early evening. It was the social hub of the village. So the fact that she's there at noon, entirely alone, suggests she is actively avoiding the other women of the town.
Or maybe they've driven her away.
Exactly, likely due to the shame associated with her moral reputation.
And into that extreme isolation, Jesus asks her a seemingly simple question. He just says, "Give me some water." But according to the research, that simple request is the equivalent of dropping a cultural bomb.
Oh, he is shattering two deeply entrenched taboos simultaneously with that one sentence.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, there was a strict social code that Jewish rabbis did not speak to unaccompanied women in public.
Just flat out, didn't happen.
Didn't happen. Second, and perhaps even more shockingly to the original audience, Jews did not share drinking vessels with Samaritans.
Because of that ritual impurity you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Because Samaritans were considered ceremonially unclean, if a strict Jew drank from a Samaritan's water jar, they would incur that ritual impurity themselves.
Wow. So Jesus is ignoring centuries of prejudice and these deeply ingrained religious barriers just by asking for a drink.
Yes. And she is completely shocked by it.
I mean, naturally, she even asks him point blank, like, how can you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?
But notice what Jesus does. Instead of explaining his progressive views on cultural boundaries, he completely pivots the conversation.
Right. He moves from physical thirst to this massive theological concept. He tells her that if she knew who she was talking to, she would have asked him, and he would have given her living water.
And the study notes highlight a brilliant linguistic double meaning here. In the original language, the phrase living water was actually a common idiom for fresh flowing spring water.
Oh, like water that moves as opposed to stagnant water sitting at the bottom of a deep well.
Exactly. And Jacob's well was very deep. Some estimates put it at over 100 feet.
So she's hearing this purely in the physical sense. She's thinking, wow, an artesian spring.
Right.
I just love the realism of her reaction here. She looks at him, sees he doesn't even have a bucket, and essentially says, "Sir, the well is deep. Where are you getting this magic flowing water?"
She says, "Give it to me so I don't ever have to come back here."
Yes. "Give me this water so I don't have to haul heavy jars in this noon heat again."
It is such a human response.
Huh.
I mean, she desperately wants a permanent physical solution to her daily exhaustion and, the social shame of her noontime routine.
But Jesus is using living water as a profound metaphor for the Holy Spirit, right?
Yes, he's introducing an internal, eternal source of spiritual life that permanently satisfies the deep thirst of the human soul.
But she is clearly not tracking with the metaphor at all.
Not at all. So, to wake her up to the spiritual reality of who is sitting in front of her, Jesus takes the conversation to an intensely personal place. He tells her, "Go, call your husband and come back."
I have to ask, why choose that specific nerve to press?
Because it's the very root of her isolation. When she answers, "I have no husband," what's technically true, but heavily guarded.
She's definitely holding back.
Right. So Jesus responds by laying her entire life bare. He reveals that she has had 5 husbands, and the man she is currently living with is not her husband.
Oh, wow.
He speaks directly to the reality that has marginalized her from her community and driven her to the well at high noon.
And the moment he reveals this impossible to know intimate detail about her life, the light bulb finally goes on. She says, "Sir, I see that you are a prophet."
But then she does something that is so universally human.
Oh, she totally deflects. She feels exposed, so she immediately changes the subject to a theological debate.
Exactly.
She points to Mount Gerizim and says, "Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews say the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem."
It's the ultimate deflection. She's steering the conversation far away from her messy personal life and toward the most controversial religious argument of the day.
But notice how Jesus handles it. He refuses to take the bait.
Right. He doesn't just pick a side to win a historical debate. Instead, he elevates the entire paradigm of worship.
He tells her a new era has arrived.
Yes. He declares that the time is coming when true worshipers will worship the Father neither on Mount Gerizim nor in Jerusalem.
He's essentially saying that God isn't confined to a zip code or a specific architectural structure.
He states, "God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The physical location, the specific temple, the genetic lineage, all of the things that created that bitter divide between Jews and Samaritans, they're suddenly rendered obsolete.
It's now just about a spiritual reality and a truthful relationship with God.
Exactly. And then when she mentions the coming Messiah, Jesus entrusts her with something monumental. He explicitly reveals himself. He says, "I who speak to you am he."
Which is staggering when you consider his audience. I mean, he doesn't make this clear, direct declaration of his messianic identity to the religious elite in the temple in Jerusalem.
No, he gives it to a socially outcast Samaritan woman at a well.
Every conceivable cultural norm, gender, ethnicity, religious propriety, geographical tribalism has been completely dismantled in the span of a single conversation.
It's amazing. And just as this ultimate revelation drops, we get an interruption.
Right, the disciples return from town with the groceries, which
Yeah.
brings the narrative right back to the mundane reality of lunch, but it also sets up another layer of metaphor.
It really does. The text says the disciples are shocked to see him talking to a woman, but they're too intimidated to ask him why.
Meanwhile, the study notes point out a very specific, beautiful detail. The woman leaves her water jar.
She abandons the very instrument of her daily burden.
It is such a cinematic detail. It's like leaving your car running with the door wide open because you just heard life-changing news and you have to go tell someone immediately.
Right, her priorities completely shifted in an instant.
She runs back to the same city and the same people she was actively trying to avoid just an hour ago and says, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ?"
The physical jar represents everything that was weighing her down, literally and metaphorically. And while she's running back to the town to become an evangelist to her own people, the disciples are at the well, urging Jesus to eat the food they just bought.
And Jesus replies to them, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about."
Which creates this fascinating parallel. The disciples start looking at each other, wondering if someone brought him a sandwich while they were gone.
They are doing the exact same thing the woman did earlier.
Exactly. The woman confused physical water with spiritual living water. And now the disciples are confusing physical food with spiritual sustenance.
So what is his food then?
Jesus explains to them that his deep sustaining nourishment, his food, is to do the will of him who sent him and to finish his work. He has just found that nourishment by crossing hostile borders to reach one marginalized woman.
Wow. And then he uses an agricultural metaphor. He tells his disciples to lift up their eyes and look at the fields, saying they are white for harvest. Now, the study notes suggest he isn't just giving a farming lecture here.
No, not at all. The notes indicate he's likely pointing directly toward the crowd of Samaritans that the woman has just mobilized.
Oh, they're literally walking out to see him.
Right, they're walking out from the town, across the fields, toward him. Jesus explains that while there's usually a long, arduous wait between sowing a seed and reaping a harvest, this new spiritual era breaks the usual timeline.
The sower and the reaper are rejoicing together right now.
Yes. And the ultimate result of this detour is that Jesus ends up staying in that Samaritan town for 2 days.
Which is an absolutely unheard of action for a Jewish rabbi.
Completely unheard of. And because of his extended stay, a massive number of Samaritans come to believe in him. They give him a title that is incredibly expansive. They'll call him the Savior of the world.
It perfectly encapsulates the entire point. The message and the mission cannot be contained by ethnic, geographic, or religious borders.
It's beautiful.
So Jesus dismantles these massive cultural and geographic boundaries in Samaria. But geography isn't the only limit people place on God. When he finally travels north and into Galilee, to the town of Cana, he encounters a completely different kind of barrier.
Right, the demand for physical proof and proximity.
Yeah. The narrative introduces a royal official. And the notes tell us he's likely a Gentile, a man of high status serving in the administration of Herod Antipas.
And he's desperate. He has traveled from Capernaum to Cana because his son is at the point of death.
Now, Capernaum is down by the Sea of Galilee, and Cana is up in the hills. That is a journey of about 24 miles, mostly uphill.
It's a grueling trek.
He makes this terrible trek, finds Jesus, and begs him to come down and heal his boy. Now, I have to stop here because Jesus' initial response seems incredibly harsh. He says, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe." That sounds callous. Why attack a grieving father who has just walked 24 miles to ask for help?
It is a jarring response, I agree, but the study notes provide vital context regarding the audience in Galilee. Remember the Samaritans.
Yeah, they believe just because of his word.
Exactly, without
Yeah.
demanding miracles. But the Galileans, according to the text, were drawn to Jesus primarily as a spectacle. They welcomed him mainly because they had seen the miraculous signs he performed at the festival in Jerusalem.
Ah, so they wanted a show.
Right. Jesus is challenging this superficial, thrill-seeking faith. He is addressing the crowd's mentality.
But he is still saying it to a man whose son is dying. Why use this moment to make a theological point about the crowd?
Because he's also pushing the official himself to elevate his faith. The official views Jesus as a localized miracle worker, someone who needs to physically come to his house, stand next to the bed, and perform a healing.
He wants Jesus in the room.
Exactly. But Jesus wants to move him from trusting in a physical spectacle to trusting in the sovereign authority of his word alone.
And what's amazing is the official doesn't even argue the theology. He just strips away his royal dignity and simply pleads, "Sir, come down before my child dies."
He just wants proximity.
But Jesus doesn't go with him. He simply looks at the man and says, "Go, your son will live."
This is the critical moment. Jesus offers no physical token, no grand gesture, and no willingness to make the 24-mile journey back. He offers only a spoken promise.
Wow.
The official is put to the ultimate test. He has to turn around and walk a full day's journey back home with absolutely zero tangible proof that his son is actually okay.
The psychological weight of that walk back must have been agonizing. I mean, he has nothing to hold on to but a sentence. But the text says, "The man took Jesus at his word and departed."
And this is where the suspense of the narrative resolves so beautifully. While he's still on the road heading home, his servants come out to meet him with the news that his boy is alive and recovering.
And the official immediately asks them a very specific question. He wants to know what time the fever broke.
Yes, and they tell him, yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him.
And the notes say the 7th hour is approximately 1:00 p.m.
Which is the exact moment Jesus was standing 24 miles away in Cana and spoke the words, "Your son will live."
That gives me chills.
It's incredible. This second sign in Galilee proves that Jesus' life-giving power is not bound by physics, space, or distance. Just as his grace couldn't be contained by the cultural borders of Samaria, his healing authority doesn't require his physical presence in the room.
And the result is that the official and his entire household believe. It's a complete transformation from a frantic need for a physical sign to a deep, abiding trust in the word alone.
Absolutely. Both the Samaritan woman and the royal official came to Jesus with a desperate physical need, she for water to avoid the shame of her community, he for a miracle to save his son.
And both had their expectations completely subverted.
And both walked away having experienced a reality that changed their entire communities.
It is truly a masterclass in how this text uses everyday realities: thirst, a heavy water jar, a lunch break, a geographic bypass, and a 24-mile agonizing trek to reveal a message that just refuses to be boxed in.
Whether it's the deepest ethnic hatred or a vast physical distance, none of it stands in the way.
When you look at both of these stories together, the underlying theme is what people had to actively surrender in order to grasp the larger truth Jesus was offering.
That's exactly it.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your week. The people in these texts had to release their grip on the tangible world to understand what was really happening.
They had to let go.
Right. The Samaritan woman had to physically abandon her water jar, the very symbol of her daily routine and her heavy burden. The royal official had to walk away without Jesus physically accompanying him, abandoning his demand for proximity and visual proof.
It's profound when you think about the human psychology behind that.
It really is. Why are we so bound by our need for physical proof, for the routine, for the things we can see and control? So ask yourself, what is the demand for proof or the comfortable routine that you are stubbornly holding on to? And what might happen if you abandon that need for control in order to see a deeper, broader truth? It's something to really think about. God blesses all the listeners.